February is not here to make Aquarius happy. It's not here to reward you. It's not here to validate you. It's not here to give you a sense of relief. February is here to interrupt you. And if you're an Aquarius listening to this right now, there's a reason something inside you already feels slightly off. Not anxious, not emotional, just alert, like a system that has detected a quiet inconsistency. Because on the surface, your life probably works. It functions. It holds together. It looks reasonable. And that's exactly why this month feels uncomfortable. This message isn't for every Aquarius. If your life still feels alive, engaging, and aligned, if you wake up curious about your own future, you won't need this. But if February feels oddly quiet, if the excitement you expected never arrived, if things that used to motivate you suddenly feel distant, stay. Because this month isn't unlucky. It's precise. Aquarius season is often misunderstood. People talk about freedom, independence, originality, breaking patterns. But Aquarius season has never been about freedom. It's about truth without cushioning. It's about removing whatever no longer reflects who you actually are, even if it still works on paper. February doesn't bring chaos. It brings mirrors. And mirrors don't soften what they show. They don't dramatize. They don't explain. They simply reveal. For many Aquarians, February brings a very specific sensation. Not pain, not sadness, a quiet refusal. You stop wanting to explain yourself. You stop justifying choices you've already outgrown. You stop pretending interest where none exists. And that can feel unsettling because nothing visibly changed. No dramatic ending. No collapse. No moment you can point to. Just an internal shift. Something stops clicking. Aquarians are exceptionally good at living inside misalignment without immediately recognizing it. Not because they lack awareness, but because they're adaptable. They understand systems. They understand people. They understand how things function. So they rationalize. This makes sense. This is reasonable. I don't need more than this. And for a long time, that's true. Until February arrives and logic stops being enough. Because February doesn't ask whether something is logical. It asks whether it's alive. And that question doesn't care how much effort you've already invested. You might start noticing subtle changes. Conversations feel repetitive. Achievements feel hollow the moment you reach them. Your curiosity feels muted. You're not unhappy. You're disengaged. And disengagement is dangerous because it doesn't announce itself. You don't fight it. You don't resist it. You just slowly withdraw. This is where Aquarius energy becomes uncomfortable with itself. Because Aquarius values independence so deeply that it often mistakes distance for freedom. You tell yourself you're free because no one is controlling you. But February asks something sharper. If you're truly free, why do you feel so bored? Why does nothing pull you forward anymore? Why does your future feel abstract instead of alive? Why does your present feel tolerable rather than meaningful? These questions don't arrive with panic. They arrive with clarity. And clarity destabilizes. This is when many Aquarians begin to pull back. They respond less. They isolate more. They crave space. Not because they want to be alone, but because they're tired of performing versions of themselves that no longer feel real. And here's the part that's difficult to admit. Some Aquarians aren't detached because they're evolved. They're detached because they've been living a life that no longer excites them. And detachment is how they cope. Distance becomes protection. Indifference becomes armor. It allows you to stay without fully committing, to remain without choosing, to exist without participating. February removes that armor. You start noticing how irritated you feel by your own indifference. You realize how much of your life is sustained by tolerance rather than desire. And tolerance is not neutral. Tolerance slowly erodes your sense of self. This is where guilt appears. You think you should be grateful. You tell yourself other people would want this life. You remind yourself how much effort it took to get here. And all of that may be true. But February doesn't care what should be enough. It cares what's true. And truth doesn't negotiate. This is where things begin to loosen. Not dramatically. Not destructively. Quietly. You stop investing energy. You stop holding things together. You stop pretending effort equals alignment. And because your energy was the glue, things begin to drift. This can feel like loss. But loss implies something was taken from you. What's happening now is different. You're withdrawing from what no longer fits. There's grief here, but it's not grief for what's leaving. It's grief for how long you stayed, for how patient you were, for how much you normalized, for how often you told yourself, this is fine. February lets you feel that grief without rushing you past it, because it serves a purpose. It clears space. Something inside you begins to firm up. Not anger, not rebellion, precision. You stop asking, how do I make this work? And you start asking, why am I still here? And once that question appears, it doesn't go away. You don't need to explode your life. You don't need to announce anything. You don't need to explain yourself. You simply stop engaging with what drains you. And people notice. They feel the shift before you say a word. Your tolerance drops. Your availability changes. Your energy becomes selective. Some will interpret this as coldness. Let them. February isn't about being liked. It's about being aligned. And alignment always costs you the versions of yourself that were built for survival instead of truth. This is where the discomfort changes texture. It's no longer heavy. It's clean. You may not feel inspired yet. You may not know what comes next, but you feel honest. And honesty brings relief. Not happiness, relief. Because your life is no longer divided against itself. February didn't take anything from you. It removed your willingness to tolerate what was already misaligned. You weren't unlucky. You were overdue. And that realization changes how you see everything. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a correction. And this is only the beginning. That's where February really begins to work on you. Not on the surface of your life, but underneath it. Because once you stop tolerating what drains you, you start seeing just how much of your identity was built around endurance. You begin to notice patterns you once ignored. How often you stayed quiet to keep things smooth. How often you chose being reasonable over being honest. How often you convinced yourself that not wanting more meant you were evolved. And this realization doesn't come with shame. It comes with clarity. You realize you didn't lose yourself. You postponed yourself. For Aquarians, this is a hard truth to face. Because you pride yourself on being self-aware, on being ahead of the curve, on seeing through illusions. So admitting that you stayed too long in something misaligned can feel like a contradiction. But February reframes it. You didn't stay because you didn't know better. You stayed because, at the time, it still made sense. And now it doesn't. That's not failure. That's growth outpacing structure. This is where many Aquarians feel an unfamiliar tension. A subtle restlessness paired with a strange calm. You're not panicking. You're not rushing. But something inside you has already decided. You may still show up physically. You may still go through the motions. But internally, you've crossed a line. And once an Aquarius crosses that line, there's no going back. This is where the illusion of false freedom finally collapses. You realize that what you once called freedom was actually the absence of friction. You weren't choosing your life. You were simply not being challenged by it. And while that felt peaceful for a while, it slowly disconnected you from your own vitality. February reconnects you, not through excitement, but through irritation. You become deeply sensitive to anything that wastes your time. Small talk feels unbearable. Performative ambition feels empty. Goals without meaning feel insulting. You start craving substance, not stimulation. And this is where people around you may feel the shift. You're less accommodating, less available, less willing to entertain things that don't align. Not because you've become rigid, but because you've become precise. Precision is often mistaken for coldness, but it's actually respect for your own energy. This is where loss becomes visible. Some relationships loosen. Some routines fall away. Some identities stop fitting. And yes, it can hurt. Not because you miss them, but because you recognize how much of yourself you invested in maintaining them. There's a moment of mourning here. A quiet acknowledgement of what could have been, if alignment had arrived sooner. But February doesn't let you linger there. Because nostalgia is another form of attachment. And Aquarius energy doesn't move backward. It integrates, then releases. This is where realignment begins to feel real. Not as an idea, not as a concept, but as a physical sensation. Your body relaxes in certain spaces, tenses in others. Your intuition sharpens. You stop forcing yourself to feel enthusiasm. You let neutrality speak. And neutrality tells the truth faster than emotion ever could. This is the point where many Aquarians realize something profound. They don't need a new vision yet. They just need to stop betraying the current one. And that alone changes everything. Because once self-betrayal ends, energy returns naturally. Curiosity slowly reawakens. Interest flickers back. Not everywhere. Only where it's real. This is how February resets you. Not by giving you answers, but by removing noise. Not by pushing you forward, but by clearing what blocks you. You begin to understand that this month was never about bad luck. It was about timing, about catching you at the exact moment, when you were finally ready to see clearly. February didn't break anything. It revealed what was already broken. And more importantly, it revealed what was no longer yours to fix. This is the final emotional shift. Acceptance without resignation. You don't feel defeated. You feel aligned. You don't feel euphoric. You feel grounded. You understand now that discomfort was never the enemy. Avoidance was. And awareness, once activated, doesn't turn off. It simply waits for you to catch up. So here's what February is really asking of you. Not to change everything overnight. Not to make dramatic decisions. Not to burn bridges. Just this. Stop pretending. Stop pretending that tolerance is the same as fulfillment. Stop pretending that distance is the same as freedom. Stop pretending that staying quiet means staying true. Ask yourself honestly, what are you still showing up for? Out of habit, not desire? What are you maintaining? Because it's familiar, not because it's alive? What version of yourself are you keeping around? Simply because other people expect it? You don't need to answer out loud, but you do need to answer truthfully. Because February has already heard your answer. And once you hear it too, your path will begin to realign on its own. This is not the end of a chapter. It's the moment you stopped reading on autopilot. If this message felt uncomfortably accurate, if it named something you've been feeling but haven't said, that's not coincidence. That's awareness meeting you at the right moment. If this helped you see yourself more clearly, take a moment to like this. Share it with someone who might need it. And subscribe for more reflections that don't distract you. They bring you back to yourself. February isn't here to make Aquarius lucky. It's here to make you honest. And honesty is where your real life begins.